My Life Between Lives story from Newton-trained Institute practitioners.
I see a whole change in the thrust of searching for answers about who we are and why we're here. And I think it's wonderful, and I just hope the movement continues to expand.
Let us expand the universal consciousness together with a My Life Between Lives story presented by the Michael Newton Institute.
Welcome to My LBL Story. My name is Ekomananda. I am your host. Today we have special guest, Dr. Diana Paque. Diana is the Executive Director of the Michael Newton Institute since 2019. She has had a widely varied career ranging from librarianship to government leadership to academic administration. And currently, she is in private practice as a hypnotherapist, Reiki master, and a regressionist. Diana also serves as the editor of MNI's quarterly journal, Stories of the Afterlife. She says, becoming a Newton facilitator found her when she was ready. And for many of us, it takes many more adventures and years to settle into where we belong, and for her, it took much longer. A big warm welcome to Diana. Welcome to the show. I like the concept that if we don't finish everything in this life, we can take a break, or we don't have to come back. This is not necessarily the same teaching from other systems, for example, Buddhism or Christ consciousness or the Hindu culture. Now we are exposed to this new learning. How do you see the Michael Newton Institute, the role it plays in shifting our understanding and knowing the self?
I think coming from where Michael was a pioneer and a researcher who was looking to know more. And he came from the premise that he was a psychotherapist and found that when his clients went out of a past life and went between life, they found aspects of themselves as they connected to consciousness that helped them in this lifetime. He wasn't coming from a religious background. He didn't have a religious tradition that he was connected to, such as Catholicism or Hinduism or religion. So he wasn't coming at this from a religious perspective. He probably wasn't coming at it from a spiritual perspective. His intention was to help the individual live better, be more comfortable, have greater connection to who they are, so their lives were better. I mean, fundamentally better. And the way that it turned out was that souls found their way into a space where they were no longer in bodies. They were simply in a soul state and connected to consciousness. And that began that exploration. So it wasn't what he was looking for. It's what turned out from his clients doing their work and going into a space of the soul. So I think it's a different perspective. It's a different kind of inquiry. When we look at a tradition, let's say, I'll just pick Hinduism, not because I know a lot about Hinduism, but let me just start there. Because there's a strong tradition of believing in past lives and that you move from one lifetime to another lifetime to another lifetime. In Catholicism, we believe that when one finishes a life and you haven't lived that life perfectly, then you have to go to a place where your soul can repent and perfect itself. And that place is called purgatory. So in the Catholic tradition, you go to purgatory. Well, where is purgatory? Purgatory is a place of learning where you are stressed by having lessons to learn. And what is living life on earth but lessons to learn? So there is such a crossover between the concept of past lives and purgatory that never in my time engaging in Catholic theology did I ever come across anyone ever talking about the correlation of past lives and purgatory. Never, because they're different religious traditions. And Michael is looking at it not from that, but from the value to the individual of living a life that gives them the greatest opportunity to be themselves. If we look at life from the principle that I am in this body, in this lifetime, and my prime purpose in being here is to fully experience Diana. That's why I'm here. Yeah, that's it. It's very simple. It's very complicated, but it's very simple. I'm here. I chose to be in this form to experience everything that crosses Diana's path. And there's no religious symbolism there. There's nothing that connects me to any particular tradition. And I think coming from Michael's perspective, he's all about the best possible life for the individual. Why are they in therapy? To improve their lives. And that was his starting point, was therapy. And the more that he learned, the more he learned about the journey of the soul and began to see how these soul journeys were changing people's lives, that they understood more about themselves, who they were, what resources they have, where their connections are. And as he looked more, he began to look at elements of the quantum field and how in the quantum field, everything is present now. There is no past, there is no future, everything is now. And that the God energy is always present now. And so we are always in the now. And he and Pete, I don't know when they started talking about this, but Pete was president of the Newton Institute, and he and Michael had many long talks about quantum physics and about between lives and what that looks like and what people experience. And out of that, Pete developed his initial models of quantum consciousness, which is taking one into a soul space. So there is an experience that we have as souls that we can explore that Michael found, and that has opened up much new learning for many people. It's not religious. It doesn't have a religious foundation. And people who come from religious foundations are always looking for the connections. I don't think that the connections were ever naturally built. We may draw something from it. I'm drawing from my experience, but I'm not necessarily looking at the work that I'm doing as something that has a religious foundation, because the clients I work with may not. And it's not my tradition. I'm bringing them to the place of their soul, not mine. I may have the tradition of purgatory, but they might not, and that might not make sense to them, even though it makes sense to me. So in Michael's work, he was working with a large number of people who came from very different backgrounds. And what we're finding as we're expanding this work into other cultures is that there are different cultural understandings of what this work is, of what the soul is, and that how you understand this work and how I understand this work may have overlap, but may be significantly different, and neither is right or wrong. It just is. And And we work with this according to our connections. And the people who come to see us relate to the connections that we have and the journey that we can offer them. And it varies across the world. And that makes sense because we are a dynamic planet with many different traditions and many different religions. When I work with people in India, I have several clients in India, and when I was starting to work with them, I realized that these particular clients did not know much about past life experiences, even though they were Hindu. They knew it from books, they knew it from their traditions, but it wasn't something of experience. And so to go on a past life journey into a past life was something that none of them had ever experienced. They were curious, but they hadn't experienced it. And I found that in working with them, I had to change the way I took them into a trance state, into an altered state, because of their cultural differences to me. And so I had to work with them to find what supported them in relaxing and going to that space of connection. And it was different than the way I go. So I think we have to be flexible in the way that Michael was flexible and not presume there's one way or there's a religious way or there is a right way or a wrong way. There simply is the way that you are connecting in this moment with this particular client.
What a beautiful way to interpret the core of our work. And I always tell my clients or anyone comes into my life, I said, just relax your ideas, relax your perceptions, because the very core of ideas cause us suffering. Our expectations, interpretations, they may not be the true pictures. And I particularly admire Michael's, how he started work. It's neither religious nor spiritual. And I found that itself is profound. It's simply what we do, helping people, in your words, to live the best life possible. And that is all. It's in the now. Enjoy every single moment.
They just don't live that way. And it's teaching them there is more to the moment than they are experiencing. So how they experience the moment, if they can experience it from an expanded state of self with a capital S, it's completely different than that little toe experience of the small s, where they're caught up in traffic and bills to pay and what to cook for dinner and, kids making messes in the house and all of these things that are very the irritants of life. It's to be in that expanded state, whoa, this is amazing. And the woman I was working with today, she said she has anxiety. And in this expanded state, she said, there's no anxiety. I'm totally calm. I'm at peace. I said, this is your true self. You are always at peace when you move into this state of you. You do not have to be in anxiety. Choose to move into an expanded state. And you do the work so it becomes easier and easier for you to get there on your own. So I see our role is to help people make those connections. It's not our role to help people necessarily sustain the connections over their lifetimes, but we're helping them get started. We're not doing their work for them. We're supporting them and showing them how to open the doors of their own life. And when they open them, they can be really overwhelmed. And that's always wonderful. It's always so joyous to experience someone who is sitting in absolute peace and bliss, who is someone who on a daily basis is sitting in anxiety. And here for several hours, she's in bliss. I mean, what a joy.
What a joy. That's our nature state. We're always joyful. We're always at peace, at ease. And this reminds me about your recent work, What Every Soul Knows. Would you like to share a little bit more to the audience about that?
There is a film that's going to be coming out in December, and it's called What Every Soul Knows. And Paul Orand is in this film, as well as me. And the filmmaker was asking a variety of people from different fields to comment on what the soul is, what we know, what our journeys are about, how shifting into a connection of soul consciousness changed our lives. And so the film, I think from what he said, he has so much material. He's going to have part 1 and part 2 of the film. In the film, I think we each get something like a minute or 2 of time in the film itself. But because each of us came and gave our time, he created from the material, he created for each of us between half an hour and an hour of content that is posted on the What Every Soul Knows website. And so the content for mine is part of the original interview that he then collected and put into an abbreviated, it's about an hour, that he did for me as a thank you for participating in the film. And this man is someone who has done filmmaking. He's done a lot of different kinds of things and is passionate about understanding the afterlife and about helping others understand the afterlife. And so he's created this film that is coming out in December. There is another series called Journeys of the Soul. The first, What Every Soul Knows, his name is Peter Alessandria, is the filmmaker. And there is another series that has appeared on Gaia, on the Gaia network, called Journeys of the Soul. And the filmmaker for this series, his name is David Marsh. And David is a really fascinating guy who wants to spread the word about soul journeys and how they change your life. Several years ago, this is like 2020, he contacted me and we had a long conversation. It was during COVID. And he said, I want to film people doing this work. And so he came to my house. He lives in Arizona and I live in California. And he drove to my house and stayed here for a couple of days and made a film of our work together and did an interview for me. Coming off of that, he realized that trying to do a single film was too difficult. And there were too many different variations of connecting to consciousness. And so he began talking in 2022 about doing something more expanded. And he called me and asked me how I felt about this. And I got him in touch with Sanela Kovic, who was involved in social media for the Newton Institute. And we had a conversation with him about, wouldn't it be wonderful to have sessions filmed so that people could see the experience of what it might be like if you did it yourself? I think there are 30-something sessions that he filmed of QHHT sessions and quantum sessions and LBL sessions that he filmed all over the world, and that he went to see people in Europe, and he went to Dubai, and he went all over the United States and filmed individual sessions and then abbreviated them to get the content without, giving too much of the client's so the client could remain, fairly anonymous. And it was a wonderful series. And it's been sold to Gaia. So it's another one to look at. And I think that there is the energy out there now to bring this work to people through media that's available and accessible. So whether it's on YouTube or on a network like Gaia or a movie that is shown in a movie theater or sold to a network, I think there is much more interest, people wanting to know, what's it like? What is this work we do? If you look on Facebook, there is a Michael Newton Facebook page, fan page, and people are always asking about, what does it feel like to do this? It's really expensive. I don't know if I want to spend the money on it. And the general feeling is it's worth doing. You will learn something about you. This is, if you really want to know about you and all of you, connect to consciousness. And how do you do that? You may be able to do it on your own. You may be able to do it through something like Reiki. You may have a different energy experience. Or you may choose LBL or another therapy, another tradition to support you in connecting to consciousness. And I think for me, having worked for several years with this, is that the approach that Michael Newton took, especially in writing his early books, was to tell the stories of ordinary people who are experiencing their journeys and what that feels like to them. What does that feel like? What do you learn? And he wrote it to the person who might be interested in doing the journey, not to psychotherapists. He wanted people to experience this themselves, to experience their connections to consciousness. And because of that, he started training people so it wasn't just him doing this work. That's why we're here, is because he started a way to train people and expand the work. And so the movies, the videos, all of this is bringing this content, this knowing, to more people, to the world. And so I'm very grateful to Peter and to David for their work that brings forward our work. There is such a convergence of interest and energy now, even as the earth has experienced so much darkness and so much turmoil and so much sadness and war and pain. There is still this movement and this energy towards building light and towards supporting people finding their own light and being in their best selves, in that highest plane of themselves. And that's what Michael was working towards. That's why we're doing this work, or at least that's why I'm doing this work.
Thank you for watching. Please stay tuned for part 4 with Dr. Diana, Separation or Not.